I think my job is to talk about skills that are required to be an investment banker. Quick introduction. So I've been an investment banker now for 17 years. And it's a job that, when I got into the career, I didn't really know what investment banking was. So maybe I'll spend a couple of minutes so that the audience understands what investment banking is. And then I'll talk about the skills that I think are probably required for people who are interested in pursuing this as a career. Is that okay? Is that what I should cover maybe as part of this? Okay, great. I'll tell you. At a very simplistic level, I think investment banking, think about it like a financial consulting job. So, a consulting job where you advise corporate clients typically on their finance related topics. And investment banking, unlike corporate banking, is actually more associated with strategic finance. So when you typically do not look towards an investment banker for taking a loan in a company. That's much more straightforward work, and there are enough banks who cater to that that part of the a company's journey. But when a company is thinking maybe of raising funds to grow, or thinking of going public through an IPO, thinking of maybe acquiring other companies, that's when investment bankers come in. And our role is, I think consulting is probably a limited way to explain the role. This is making sure you advise the client through that journey, as well as deliver the outcome for the client. So with investment banking, our remuneration for the services that we provide is completely aligned to delivering an outcome for the client, which makes us 100% uh, aligned with clients. Now, you may have heard me say clients at least 5 times in this sentence, but I think that's kind of the core. The first thing which we are taught when we get into investment banking is the client is king completely, or queen, whichever way you look at it. The client's the most important, and we are in existence in our business because our clients use our services. I'll go through, I'd say my role as an investment banker over time, over my 17 years of having done this, has evolved. And so I'll go through the skills probably required to be a successful kind of investment banker at the start. It's a little bit of a marathon if you think about the career, but like, what are the skills that you require to do really well as an entry level person in investment banking, and then eventually as a senior person in investment banking? And the hierarchy, the nice thing about investment banking is the hierarchies are very flat. So, typically it is very typical that by the time you're in your second year or even first year of investment banking, you've had meetings with, CEOs who you dreamt of, kind of read in the newspaper, but you didn't really dream of meeting. So that's the nice thing. You get exposure to the, key people within an organization at the very get-go. Uh, but your role is different. In your initial years, you're typically listening in into meetings, and by the time you reach kind of my level, you're managing the relationship, and you're kind of dealing with and ideating with kind of founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, government. Basically, every stakeholder that has touches the economy is probably relevant. So let me that's the background. I'll get into it. And there's a lot of glamour to do with it, but I will tell you that it's a very hard-nosed business. It's a business that it's not for people who are kind of the weak. You have to be kind of strong in this business. It's almost like how Cheteshwar Pujara took all the hits during Test cricket and survived. I think that's the mentality you probably need to take in to do really well in this business. Um, so let me go through at least the skills, and I've noted them down. ahead of this, but like, I'd say there are probably 10 skills I'd like to highlight, which are very, very important. Some of which I think our education system provides well, but I think some of it you learn on the job. First one is attention to detail. Okay, I think that is the most critical skill in this business. And I actually, it wasn't something that came to me easily. It's something that I actually had to work on over my career. And I'll say the biggest conflict I had with the way we kind of grew up a little bit in India is, that whole chalta hai attitude comes in. Na? Sasta, sundar, tikau. If you can't do 100%, do 80% and move on. That doesn't work in investment banking. You have to do 100%. So attention to detail needs to become second nature to you. So that's one. Second is analytical skills. In general, I've seen that the Indian diaspora is particularly strong here. So you're talking about people who understand finance, understand a little bit math, a little bit of logic, understand corporate finance, particularly how a company needs to raise capital when, how the cash flows are trending, how to model out, build a basic model for a company, understand the different drivers of the business, understand the sensitivities to the different drivers to how it could impact the financial planning of the business. So I would say generally analytical acumen and a good business understanding is your kind of second skill. It's again very, very important. The third one, again, I don't think it's something that I still work on. It's something that, again, I don't think our Indian education system, I think it imparts it well in parts, but it doesn't impart it completely, is presentation skills. And presentation is a very loose term. I mean communication skills. So communication being verbal communication, communication being more importantly written communication, and communication being able to crystallize a lot of data and messages into very, very sharp, basically bullets or analysis that are presented to a board member or a CEO. The reason this becomes particularly important is a lot of people who you're dealing with in the world today, but I think the investment banking job gives you a good training for, is a lot of people who you're presenting to are very, very short on time. Okay. And they have to make quick decisions based on key information that you provide them. And you're talking to a CEO, CFO, founder. They have 20 other priorities. So you have to get a decision out of them. And normally you are told as an investment bank, okay, go present to us, and like within 15 minutes you should have kind of delivered the message that you want to deliver. So being able to balance out getting into the detail and yet not being superfluous or extra, providing extra information is absolutely critical. And that is in everything that you do. It's actually in the way you communicate. It's in the emails that you write. It's in the presentations that you make to the client. It has to become second nature to you. It's almost like I feel like I wrote down 10 points to discuss because I knew I had half an hour and I had probably 20 minutes to present and then 10 minutes for Q&A, right? So presentation, very, very important. Fourth one and fifth one are easy, but again, it's not necessary. Drive and hunger, okay? Being hungry and motivated for the job, because the job at an entry level is not an easy job sometimes, okay? You are spending, call it, 15 hours a day, sometimes working. You have other priorities you're trying to balance out. It's a lot of fun. It's very, very gratifying. I must say it's extremely, extremely gratifying. But as is the case with anything else, sacrifices have to be made along the way. And so at some level, you have to be really hungry and motivated, saying this is what I really want to do to kind of last out in the journey, right? I would probably say that. I'll go through kind of, so the six now these are kind of the core skills I would say for someone who's thinking about doing this as a career. Now, as you continue to build into this career and become kind of more senior over time, there are other things that kick in, right? So I would say interpersonal teamwork. So interpersonal skills and teamwork critical right from the start, but what it demands of you from the start is more being part of a team, knowing the role you play in a team. Again, if you look at our test cricket example, it's great, right? Pujara had a role, Rishabh Pant had a role. Knowing the role you play in a team and making the value of the team more is important. As you become more senior, it's interpersonal towards leading a team, which is again normal, but it's also towards the client. So you have to, listening what a client is telling you will be probably 50% of what is really in their minds. And you have to really listen hard to understand what their motivation is so that you can provide a solution to them. So I would say interpersonal skills, absolutely, absolutely important. Um, the next one is, thinking on your feet, creating ideas, being an idea generator and connecting the dots. I'm combining both, but your job is to understand all the moving variables typically in an economy, in a sector, in the motivation of what the owners of competitors might be thinking if you want to bring ideas to your client. So you might go tell a client, listen, I think it's not interesting for you to maybe merge or acquire this business which is in your same sector. I think this is why it makes sense. I think these are the synergies for both of your businesses to come together. I think the owner of the other business is at a point in time where they're willing to evaluate a conversation with you, because a lot of this has to do with emotional decisions as well. The logic of one business acquiring another business may be very, very high, but if the business if the business has been within family owned businesses for multiple years, families just don't want to sell. They're saying, this is my relevance to society is the fact that I'm a founder of this business. So understanding that and dealing it with very carefully, because these are very confidential. Nearly every so I'll say confidentiality is actually, ethics and confidentiality is the highest in being a successful investment banker, because a lot of clients are sharing things with you which they may not even share with other family members, because they are kind of talking to you about things that are strategic, how they're thinking about passing on the business to the next family, next generation, etc., etc. So I'd say thinking on your feet, connecting the dots, knowing how India is doing, knowing how COVID is doing in India, knowing how inflation is doing now, knowing how interest rates are doing, knowing how commodity cycles are doing, knowing how the markets are doing, knowing how the different players in the sector are doing, knowing how their shareholders are thinking. It's a very, you have to do a lot of reading to be very good strategically to your clients. I think 9 is relationship. So this is important. Relationships over skills. So skills, hard skills versus soft skills, right? So hard skills, absolute necessity to being successful in this job. You're not going to survive without it, right? Softer skills, relationships in my view are non-linear in their value. So what I mean by that is, you never know when you're taking the time out in a day to invest in a relationship, and when that relationship may or may not pay off. I've had situations where I've had clients who I've met, and within a week they've given us business. I have a situation today, believe it or not, where a client who I met 11 years ago is giving me business for the first time today, right? So the persistence of, you know making sure that you don't waste time, also you have to be very judicious about making sure you're investing in a return and you're doing good business, but also that relationships are sometimes non-linear. And what that means is, you may be thinking, oh, I invest X amount, but it might pay off 5x at a time that you would never know, right? And so uh, I'd say that. And then 10 is, I'd say, again, it's kind of a slightly more, this thing is like, thinking about dealing with stress in the right mix of balancing your calmness with your anxiety. So what I mean by that is, you have to be calm, to be effective in this business, regardless at whatever level you are, whether you're a junior person or a senior person. The stress is going to be high, time is going to be limited, but ultimately it's just business at the end of the day, and you have to be calm to make the decisions. But a lot of times you're in a very, very competitive business. Okay, there are 20 other people who are running for that same piece of business that you are running for, and you have taken your time to differentiate yourself in the eyes of the client over time by building the relationship, but yet you have to run really hard because you have to respect the competition. The competition is very, very credible. So balancing out the calmness and anxiety is also important. A little bit of stress is good, too much stress is bad. So that balance is important. I'll stop there. I see it's 9:20. I went through kind of 10 skills I thought were probably important across the junior and senior level. Happy to take any questions or address anything you might have.
Yes, Mr. Krishna, I have a few questions. My name is
Sure.
Lavina Anthony. I head training and development at EduBridge. And I
Hi,
come
Lavina.
across many learners at our centers, okay, both women, men, across varied age groups. And so we interact a lot with them, okay? And it is so interesting. You mentioned 10 skills you need to have to be able to get into the investment banking space. But one of the biggest myths that I have heard when we come across our students who are from the commerce background or from the science background, they feel, but if I don't have economics or math as a background, I cannot get into investment banking. Is that true?
Yeah, so I'll say this. Look, so I don't have economics as a background. So I'm an engineer. I did my
Okay.
engineering before I did my MBA. See, the nice thing about investment banking, I have met people of backgrounds across the board, right? So I have met people with uh, engineering backgrounds, people with arts backgrounds, people with commerce backgrounds, people with eco backgrounds. Actually met people with also like acting backgrounds who've done investment banking eventually. I'll say an MBA definitely helps. Okay, and I think an MBA is look. Let's put it this way. I think there are different tracks to an investment banking job. I think there is. I work at the Goldman Mumbai office where we are kind of on the front line dealing with clients in India or international clients who are doing stuff in India. And so I think at the base minimum, I think that job probably requires an MBA, right? But there are jobs that are there in, for example, the Goldman Bangalore office, right? And there's, 7,000. The Bombay office has only 100 people. The Bangalore office has 7,000 people.
Wow.
And there the experience is very varied, right? It's across technology, operations, research, banking. So you have people who are non-MBAs, but you have people who are MBAs as well. So it's kind of a complete mix. But I'd say, if I think about, I don't think you need an eco background. But I do
Oh,
think that, the MBA helped me get the basic kind of understanding of finance, which helped me in my career. So I'd say that.
fantastic. That answers that question. And also, it is felt a lot. I guess it again is a rub off of the movies that we watch, but it's felt a lot that to be an investment banker, you need to be from like a really, really good B school. Else, it's a very difficult stream to get into. You cannot really become an investment banker if you're not from like one of those top B schools. Is that true?
So look, I think the investment banking market in India is small. You have totally, I want to say, probably somewhere in the range of probably 150 to 200 investment bankers in India. So it's not very big. Uh, like for example, I'll talk about my team. We do hire only from the IIMs, okay, but
Okay.
that's Goldman. But I started my career at Kotak, which is a very, very high quality local investment bank. Okay, very, very, very high quality. They also probably have a pretty high bar. But what you're seeing now is you're starting to see people who are, or, who've done investment banking for, 17, 18 years like me, who are setting up
Yeah.
their own shops. right? And those shops are not very big. They're, boutique firms with, call it, 5 people, 6 people, 3 people, four
Yeah.
people. I think the core there is not about, your brand or what you like. I think there you're looking for people. You're looking for people who are just hungry. So I'd say yes, I'd say an MBA is important. I'd say an MBA from a good school probably puts you well in position for probably bulge bracket
Oh,
investment banking role, but it's not limiting at all. And I think there are
okay.
different roles within investment banking, like within a firm where MBAs are not required at all, right? So it depends.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, one, I just have one last question that keeps coming up to me, especially from the women learners who we have. Is it true that investment banking is mainly more male dominated and is not very female oriented? Is there any
Not
is
at
it a
all.
myth or
It's a myth.
no?
It's a myth. I will
There
tell
you
you
go.
it's a complete myth. In our team, we have, I think, 40% of our team is women, right? And I will tell you a lot of people who I grew up working with, like, the people, it's an apprenticeship business. This is a business where you start and you kind of get trained on the job, and a lot of people who influence you are the people who you work with. And a lot of people who have influenced the way I think or the way I approach my career have been my women bosses. So, they are, and you won't believe, like, there are a lot of super women at Goldman Investment Banking. Their partners, they do they have roles which all of us are aspiring towards. And in parallel, they're mothers of five. And you're so
Wow.
surprised. You're like, wow, how do you manage these things? And this is not just one. I could name a few women at Goldman. And I'll say the person who used to run Morgan Stanley's head of investment banking was a woman. The person who runs Merrill Lynch's investment banking is a woman. The person who used to run UBS's investment banking and JP Morgan's investment banking in the early 2010, like 2011, were women. In fact, I'd say this finance, in a weird way, I feel the finance job, yes, it's demanding, but the reality is now, we all know that, women, in fact, probably are able to balance and multitask stuff better than men.
True.
And finance in India, and I don't even feel defensive. I actually think, first of all, India as a country across, if you compare it to the world, has had many more women leaders than even people like in the US, they're getting so excited about Kamala Harris. I'm like, you know what? I mean, if you see India, we were here 35 years ago. So
Yeah,
that's
been
one.
there, done that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think also I'd say that also in financial services, the reality is in India, there have been so many women leaders. So absolutely not. I think it's a question of balancing. Look, the reality is this job is demanding, which is the case with a lot of jobs. And you'll always find the people who can balance out across their priority set in terms of the role that they play in their families. And so, no,
Correct.
absolutely.
Correct. So that brings me to the end of my questions. Thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely. I am very happy to be part of this, and congratulations on this great event.